Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Natasha Jhabhaskar. Rex Tillerson is currently on his first visit to India in his capacity as the US Secretary of State. The stage for the visit, however, was set last week with Tillerson's speech on defining India-US relationship for the next century at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a premier Washington-based think tank. Tillerson highlighted a number of points of convergence between the two democracies and the unlocking the potential that exists in this relationship. So why this visit is important? What are the complexities as well as possibilities that exist in India-US relationship? Joining me on the program today, very esteemed panel with me is former Ambassador to the US, Meera Shankar. Thanks very much, Ambassador, for joining us on this program. Also, Distinguished Fellow and Head of Observer Research Foundation Strategic Studies Program, Professor Harshvardhan Pant. Thanks very much, Professor, for joining us here. And also the Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs, Professor Sreeram Chaulia. Thanks very much, Professor, for joining us here. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, Professor Chaulia, but then even this relationship, as far as the bilateral between India and US is concerned, it has its own limitations, as the Ambassador was pointing out. Let's not forget, for us, the biggest concern remains is Pakistan. And, you know, from being very vociferous on multinational, on multilateral fora on the issue of diplomatic isolation of Pakistan, how far we have really moved there, you know, how far US has actually contributed, or US has been on Indian side in terms of tackling terrorism.
I think they are tightening the nose, no doubt about it, progressively. If you look at the statistics, like for example, the military and civilian assistance to Pakistan was nearly $4 billion until 2011. Now it's less than $1 billion. And secondly, Trump administration has come up with an interesting contraption called escrow account, where they're going to park some of the military aid for Pakistan in a certain condition-based system, and they're going to release them in tranches. So I think so far they have been they have walked the talk on the policy, which is to actually be far more aggressive with Pakistan in trying to change their behavior. But I think we have to be realistic. I mean, the United States has far less leverage over Pakistan today than China. So to that extent, whether it can really alter Pakistani behavior, I think it's a long shot now. And the Pakistanis, so this double game thing which the US has been accusing has been a long time. It's more than a decade. So to expect a drastic change in their behavior,
but is there a growing disenchantment with Pakistan for the US administration? Yeah,
that is obvious. But you see, there are contradictions in this. For example, they are also now taking a more strident line against Iran. And for the Afghan strategy to really work, which brings in India as a kind of an important play, they want us to step up and play a bigger role. But on the other hand, they want to downgrade Iran. So our strategy has been through Chabahar and through Iran to reach Afghanistan and Central Asia. So on one hand, you know, they have this Israel lobby in the US, and they have this whole, you know, Saudi lobby which they are now following to try and neutralize or weaken Iran. But that doesn't help us as far as the Afghan strategy goes. So you remember some of our big projects, for example, Salma Dam, we have constructed in Herat. It is closer to the Iranian border. We need Iranian cooperation, but Trump is not looking at it that way. So there are problems there. The other complexity which I want to highlight is on the Defense Technology Trade Initiative, and this area we have not really made huge progress. You know, there have been some few token small projects, but co-production is not happening. So even when Mattis came, I mean, the idea is that Trump wants to sell. So he's still on the transactional road. He is not looking at a long term. So although Tillerson is talking about a 100-year perspective and long term and all that, we don't even know how long Tillerson will last. I mean, look at the president is tweeting openly saying, Rex, don't waste your time trying to talk to the North Koreans.
So there are domestic compulsions also, and the domestic compulsions.
I think we are still in a grey area. I don't see that we've made that much positive progress.
So now India and US have jointly announced their crackdown on global terrorism, and especially emanating from Pakistan. We have seen the repeated visits of the senior diplomats to Pakistan or to India has reiterated the same point, that how Pakistan should deal with these terror groups. Has anything changed in the Pakistan's attitude? All this while I've been asking only one question. We talk about diplomatic isolation, but is Pakistan feeling isolated?
Well, the Pakistani Prime Minister Abbasi claims that they are producing results for the US. And they are saying, for example, they cooperated with them in a hostage rescue of a Canadian-American couple recently, which was held by Haqqani Network in the tribal areas on the Afghan border. So that has been held up as a kind of an example. Trump suddenly, took to the airwaves and said, we are very happy and very pleased with what Pakistan is doing for us now. So I think they have this ability to, from time to time, pull a rabbit out of the hat and say, look, we are doing stuff for you. And I think the establishment in Pakistan is still relatively smug about it, because they have said that no matter what Trump has as a new policy, we've got China as our, real backer, and the investments and the level of financial commitments Chinese are making, overpower anything the US can ever do. But also, I think the old, in a way, it's perpetuating the old structural logic, which is for supply routes. If Trump is going to increase even marginally 5, 6, 7,000 more troops come in for counterterrorism operations, they will again rely on Pakistan.
Right.
And the hostility towards Iran means that they're even more reliant on Pakistan now. So I think in that sense, the Pakistanis know they can continue to play the game. But as I said before, there are tighter restrictions now. So I think the level of hostility between Islamabad and Washington is going to keep on growing. And Trump is not going to be, because he's always counting change, as in, how much am I getting out of this? And clearly they're going to be saying not even 1 billion, it's not worth it if they're just giving us some hostages. So I think Tillerson is trying, and Mattis is trying to say, you need to give us more.
But will you agree that the bigger challenge in the Trump administration now is the stability and the sort of uncertainty that exists in the very thought itself? How far this thought will remain. The hostility which we are talking about US being hostile to Pakistan at this stage, how far this is going to remain. And do you see in the very approach of US a sort of consistency and stability, because continuity is at the very core of foreign policy?
I don't know. You see, I think they are looking at maybe weakening the Haqqani network, and Pakistan may be interested in doing a kind of a deal where some of their proxies will not be touched, but the Haqqani group may be either dismantled or sidelined. The Pakistanis have done that in the past. If you go back, they had Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, but when it came to abandoning or downsizing one or two of them, they have done it. But they continue to maintain their, because the basic conflict of interest between US and Pakistan is that the Pakistanis want hegemony over Afghanistan.
Right.
And United States and India don't.
Okay.
So that's the basic problem. And now the Pakistanis are also trying to bring in the Russians on their side, which is complicates and muddles it. But I think the Russian angle is somewhat exaggerated.
We'll talk about the Russian angle also. But what do you really make of this particular visit of the Afghan president here to India, and the sort of talks that has happened between the president and the Prime Minister?
I think Ashraf Ghani has been sufficiently chastened to now, believe that India is truly, he said that we are in total alignment of interest with India. And he had thought otherwise when he came into power. And we knew that we just had to wait it out. And we have seen this before also with Afghan leaders. So I think he's seeing greater strategic value in India as a provider of security and of course for infrastructure, for reconstruction, all these projects. There are some things that he said which are very significant. One is, he said we are not going to join China-Pakistan economic corridor. As in like the next level of it,
right.
Unless Pakistan provides land access to Afghanistan for India. So I think that's a very significant point, which is basically saying even though China may be part of the quartet, which is trying to broker the peace agreement, and China is muscled its way in using Pakistan, while we are not part of the peace process officially.
Right.
The Chinese-Pakistani collusion is not going to be accepted by the Afghans because they know it is to their detriment. So I think Ashraf Ghani made a very clear point on that. The other thing he said is, I'm not in favor of a Pakistan-managed peace process. And that again is very close to our own view, which is that it must be Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. So I think he is now, see, look at the intensity of the attacks. The state is losing territory, losing personnel at a record level right now, the war. And the number of casualties is tremendous. And to boot, now there is a so-called ISIS threat also.
Right.
Shias are being especially targeted. So the state is now shrunk to 59 or 60% is officially, that's what they hold in terms of districts in Afghanistan. So it's really crunch time for them.
Okay.
And I would like to mention a point that India said, which is we agreed to extend further assistance depending on the needs of Afghan defense and police forces. That was the comment during President Ghani's visit. So I think we have to really walk the talk on this point.
Okay.
My own view is that at least the big strategic landmark projects where India has invested heavily in Afghan reconstruction, for example the Salma Dam in Herat, for example the Zeranj-Dalaram highway which connects to the ocean, those are the and to Iran, those are the things where I think we will need to do more than simply training. And I think the time is coming because Trump is not committing fully, and to piggyback on the US. That's been our strategy in many ways for many years. I think that's no longer going to work, because 15,000 US troops are going to do no more than, at the peak they had nearly 100,000 in Afghanistan during Obama, 2010-11. So I think the alignment has to really concretize in more ways than is being done right now. India has done a lot and Afghans are grateful to us, but I think the juncture is very critical. We need to do more.
Professor Chaulia.
See, I think there's one additional component apart from what Harsh has mentioned, which is, the ethnic fragmentation in Afghanistan is very, severe, and especially at the elite level. Now, if you see, Ghani doesn't get along with the Abdullah. These two have been at loggerheads. This national unity government has not really delivered as expected. And then the other big puzzle, General Dostum, the Uzbek warlord, the former vice president, he is in exile now. They've been sent him out to Turkey. So if you see the so-called Pashtun, Tajik and Uzbek, the divisions, those continue to be manipulated at the elite level, and those, I think, the absence of an Afghan rubric, national rubric, is really hurting them in this battle against Taliban. So yes, corruption and misgovernance, yes, those are huge concerns, but also the, you fight for, qawm, you fight for your ethnic group or tribe than for the nation. That is somewhere, I think, I always believe that among our trainings, we should be also not just doing military trainings, but show, be proud of the fact that India has managed multiple ethnic and multicultural diversity far more successfully in the whole of Asia than any other country. And I think we should be proud about it. Our problem has been diplomatically very diffident. We say that only if they ask, we will come forward, otherwise it's seen as imperial. My own view is we should be far more proactive and offer ways of reconciling different ethnic groups, territorial issues, and also claims for property and land. All these actually tie together and create a fragmented polity. So nation building, I think India has a role in nation building in a social and political way as well, not just infrastructural.
Final comment on the program, left with last 2-3 minutes. Professor Chaulia, taking a cue from the Afghanistan policy of United States, and as many said, that the central change is the end of time-bound commitments and a shift to conditions-based evaluation in Afghanistan. Do you think that the Afghan policy of US will really be, effective in Afghanistan, and it can actually reap results?
Well, winning is out of the question, at least the way Trump defines it. And it is still an open-ended commitment, because he is saying the counter-terrorism mission will go on forever until the goal is accomplished. So I don't think they can do it. As far as the reconciliation and getting a settlement goes, that is also not going far. And now we have the resurgence of ISIS, the so-called Khorasan province of ISIS in this region. So I think it's going to be a grim security situation. The most we can expect and we should prevent is a collapse of the Afghan state and a vacuum. And I think that's been our long-term strategy, and we are cognizant of the threats to the state, and I think we should continue to work towards that. But then, even if it is not collapsed, half-functioning or a dysfunctional Afghan state is not going to really yield any kind of maximal outcome. So I think we need to step up in many ways, military, political and social.
Thanks very much, all of you, for joining us on this program, and that's all we have for you in this edition of Insight. Thanks very much for watching.